Quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast. So there I was. This is episode number 155. He's guilty. What a nice guy.
Right? Which one?
Which one? And which one
All of them?
is presidents is what we're talking about. This is our second episode with Howie, who was a air crewman, steward on Air Force One for 5 presidents.
Yeah, 18 years. That's just unheard of.
I know.
Man, talk about, when someone says, I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that room. This dude was a fly on the wall in that room.
Yes. So he has what they call a Yankee White clearance, which means he could listen. He could be in the room when they were talking about the most sensitive information ever. And he, of course, he didn't divulge any of that, but he did divulge some things that were, well, it's truly historical. And what a pleasure it was
to include Lillian Carter. What a pistol that lady was.
Oh my gosh, that was great stories right there.
Right? I mean, who'd have thunk?
Who knew?
Yeah.
Let's see. We have to give a shout out, right?
Yeah. Well, first of all, a thank you to the person who's making this week's show possible. A guy by the name of Robbie Walling. Have you heard of him?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
I'm being sarcastic. Robbie Walling is actually awesome gentleman, and I've known him for, well, I don't know, over 10 years, probably close to 12 or 13. We served at the same squadron together. He was young and brand new when I first met him, and it was a pleasure to watch him develop. But hey, he's a smart guy.
So don't be a moron. Call Robbie.
Don't be a moron. He's surrounded himself with other smart guys, and they have their shit together. So
they can help you put an extra 7 figures in your pocket at retirement, it sounds like. So, yeah. 214-JET-7030. Robbie Walling, HSI Wealth Strategies. Thank you, Robbie, for sponsoring this show. Hey, Sticks had an interesting encounter last night.
Oh, my gosh. Yes.
Yeah.
So shout out to the VT3. What are they? The Red Knights? VT3 Red Knights?
I don't know. I'll try and look at that while we talk a little more. But
it's a fixed wing training squadron at Whiting Field. They fly the T6 Texan 2, and apparently there's quite a few listeners from that squadron.
The Red Knights, you got it.
Red Knights, Red Knights.
Yeah.
So hey, thanks for listening.
The instructors are plugging our show down there. We're thrilled to have that. Thank you. We're humbled.
Yeah,
holy cow.
It's very humbling, and it's also exciting to know. There's basically the new generation is out there listening to the old generation telling stories while they're making their 10% own. 10%
of which are true.
Well, like Gallo said, many a good war story's been ruined by an eyewitness.
Right? What the hell? So. Yeah, so thanks to all the Navy, Marines, Coasties, and I guess they even let the Air Force guys train with those down there now. I don't, or has that changed again? I don't know.
I don't know.
The primary flight training there at Whiting Field in Milton, Florida, where I'm given to understand there's more churches per capita in Milton, Florida than any other town in the world. But
and also, don't forget about the So There I Was giveaway.
Yeah. So thereos.us/giveaway. One word.
What are we giving away this time?
So There I Was banner beach towel. Man, this thing is nice too. I've got one. Oh, I love it. So go to there. It asks you to do things like, talk about the show on Twitter, give us a 5-star rating, put it up on your Facebook page that you listen to the show. I mean, you've got to admit that you listen to us. Sorry about that, but that gets you points, and the person with the most points at the end of April will get a very nice show beach towel sent to them. We had 5 flasks given away. Show can't afford to give away 5 beach towels because they're expensive. They're nice, but we gave away 5 flasks last month. One's on its way to the United Kingdom. There's my Disney accent. Doc managed to snag one.
Listen, I'm glad Doc got one, because otherwise I was probably going to have to give him mine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and they're actually getting their names engraved on them. So
that's outstanding.
And we mentioned it last week, but we'll say again, Kevin Spalding put us in touch with a gent by the name of Ben Robinson, who spent 7.5 years in the Hanoi Hilton. And so he's on an upcoming show. We're grateful to you, Kevin, for the money, but even more for this chance to talk to a great American. And, but
wait,
enough of
hold
that.
on. Hold on. But before we go any further, I have to do one thing. Spalding!
Right? I was trying to think of a call sign for him,
well,
like Wilson
I was thinking,
or...
So that was Judge Smell's grandson, right? Spalding.
Oh, that's right.
So from Caddyshack. So I was just thinking call sign Smells.
Yeah, there you go, Smells.
Judge Smells, Spalding.
Sentenced boys younger than you to the death chamber. Didn't want or death. Sentenced to death. Didn't want to do it. Felt I owed it to him.
Are you my friend, Danny? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Hey, listen, we should probably get out of the way and
listen to this. Yeah. Balls so big, building the 747, the Saudi side trip.
Oh my gosh. There's so much to it. Right?
Yeah.
Let's let it go.
Let's do it. Let's get out of the way and don't spill coffee on the president.
Don't spill coffee on the president.
This here is a true story about crossing the pond at night in the world's smallest cockpit on the tanker through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that, thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So you said all of them, but I'm going to go back to this question again. I'm sorry. I'm going to press you on it. Who grew most in the job? Who became much better at it than in the end than in the beginning?
I think President Clinton did.
Okay.
I think
Why?
he did. Well, he had a lot of attributes that we back there. You guys were in the service when they brought up TQM, total quality management.
Oh yeah.
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 Well, it works, and he was one that believed in that and stuff like that. When my opinion is when they came into office, that group there was a considerable feeling that they looked at professional military people were people that couldn't get jobs on the outside, and there was kind of an attitude toward that. But in a year and a half, I saw that change because the military was the only people that would absolutely did what they said they were going to do when they said they were going to do it. They realized that the Navy runs the White House, the Marines run the helicopter, the Army and the Coast Guard runs the ground transportation and communications, and the Air Force runs the airplane. So, I saw them grow and really appreciate the military and what they did and things of that nature.
That's awesome.
That's a unique perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. And you had which president would you say you were closest with?
Well, yeah, that's a question. It's which one did you like?
Which kid is your favorite? I get it. I'm sorry. That may be an unfair question.
But it's not political, okay?
Yeah.
It's not to do with
right.
Politics. The best administration I experienced, because they were the most organized, was the Reagan administration. We got a schedule once every 3 months, and that's what you did. All the other administrations, they would send us a schedule once a month, then they'd send it twice a month, then they'd send it once a week, then they'd send it twice a week. And literally, because they were responding to polls and things of this nature, and everything was fluid. I remember when the Clinton administration came in, these sharp college girls came out that was going to run these trips for the president, and I explained to them, I showed them the airplane, the facilities, and I explained to them, I said, planning is the most important process in this whole moving of a president. And they turned to me and they said, we got here by being spontaneous and we're not going to change. And they weren't bullshit.
How'd that work out for them?
Yeah, how'd that work for them? Because I'm guessing not well.
Well, I literally had a mole in the White House feeding me information, and
There you go.
Yeah, but they knew that I didn't need to know where we're going. I got to know when we're going. I got to have some times.
Right.
And, to go out and buy meals and plan the meals and do it and, get them.
You can't have rotting food or no food. Those are your...
But now, as far as getting close to, Bill Clinton was 1 year younger than me. And so he's the first president I had that predominantly listened to rock and roll. All the other presidents listened to all kinds of music, predominantly country, but some of them would listen to the stuff, my marriage was a failure. My divorce ain't working out either, so.
Right.
I mean, Clintons were listening to the Four Tops and the Beach Boys. And when they designed the 747, they weren't familiar with a president that liked music as much as President Clinton. So when he wanted to listen to his rock and roll in his stateroom, the whole airplane had to listen to the same music and at the same volume that he liked. And he liked loud rock and roll, which I do. So I went to the radio operators and we bought him a big box.
Big boom box, huh?
Big boom box, put Air Force One on it, and I presented it to him. I said, now you can listen to your own music. And I said, sir, back in the old days, they would have rewired this airplane for $10 million. And we just gave you this, and you got the same quality. He said, you guys are reinventing government. We love it. So one day I went into the stateroom, and he was playing loud rock and roll. He was, Cecilia, You're Breaking My Heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was quite loud. And he said, Howie, is this too loud? I said, I've been waiting for a guy like you to come along for a long time. So, well, I think some of the crew, and I would say the stewards more than anything else, we kind of crossed the line with the gentleman. And that was part his fault because we were the only people around, wasn't going to ask him for anything, and
Sure.
he needed that kind of friendship. And we're supposed to maintain a professional relationship, but it got a little bit more than that where we could joke around. I mean, one time we were going to Florida and I had Steve Lomanak, who's the chief. He lives down here on the golf course with me, with the rest of our Air Force crew down here in Cape Fear. And I had him enter the stateroom from one side and I entered the other side, and we were going to Florida. And I looked at his schedule, and he was campaigning and working his butt off the whole time. So he was sitting about 6 to 8 feet from me at his desk, and Steve and I were on the other end of the room. And I whispered loud enough so the president could hear. I said, hey, Steve, you bring your golf clubs? And the president turns, you guys playing golf? I said, yeah, we're playing golf. He said, you ain't playing golf? He said, I'm be damned. He says, I'm down here raising all this money for these people, and they can't give me 4 hours off to play golf, and you guys are playing golf. He said, where are you playing golf? I said, we're playing at Doral. He says, you guys are playing at Doral? I said, yeah, we're playing there free because we know you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Well, we're not supposed to have that type of relationship.
Sure.
Now, one time he said to me, Howie, I need a favor. I said, sir, if you knew what we'd be willing to do for you, you'd get nervous. He said, I'm already nervous.
Right? Oh, fantastic. And a pre-chat, you were telling me about him coming back, a trip you took shortly after he came back from his mother's funeral.
Yeah.
Can you relate that?
Yeah, that's in several books, actually. We were going to Moscow to a summit, and his mother had passed away, and he was very close to his mom. His mom traveled with us quite a bit, and he had come from his mother's funeral 3 days. You know how tiring that could be, and being very close to your mom. And he landed at Andrews Air Force Base at 9:30 at night, and a Gulfstream that he's on, and Timmy Kerwin was the chief on that airplane, my deputy. He was taking care of the president, and they taxied up, and he walked off the airplane at 9:30, comes over, walks up the steps of the 747 Air Force One again. He left there because Air Force One, remember, is any airplane that the president's on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Gulfstream was Air Force One while he was on it, and now he's getting on
747.
Yep.
And he's walking up steps. Ted Koppel's doing Nightline on the airplane. Now, I had a kick out of that because the director of the White House brought me back to meet Ted Koppel. Well, Ted Koppel was one of the newsies that I flew with Kissinger quite some time. And so he introduced me to Ted Koppel and said, Howie's the chief, and that he'll try to make everything available to you. And Ted says, I've known Howie for 20 years. Don't worry about it. So anyway, he's now, what I'm saying, it's 9:30 at night. He's under the gun. He's going to work. He's not taking his shoes off and relaxing. Okay. Right. And so he's doing Nightline. I remember I was there. One of the questions that they always tried a little bit of a gotcha once in a while. And they asked him why he didn't speak at his mother's funeral. And he said, I thought it was time for a son to be a son, not a president speaking at a funeral. Okay. Anyway, he stayed up late, which he always did. And his staff used to say, let Howie wake him up. He likes Howie. Because he was difficult to get up sometimes because he would stay up late.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got Hillary in the stateroom. It's a forward stateroom. 747 has when you walk into the stateroom, then there's a forward stateroom with a desk and 2 chairs and 2 couches that pull out into bunks that they can sleep in. And I don't know if they changed that or not. But anyway, I got Hillary to sleep. And then I got him to sleep about 30 minutes later, and he only got 2.5 hours sleep. Now, remember, he came from a funeral. He's doing Nightline. He stays up late. I'm waking him up. From the time I step in that stateroom, I got 2 hours. From the time that airplane's going to block in at Moscow, the door's going to open, and he's got to walk out. I actually should have took 2 hours, but I had an hour and a half because I felt terrible for him not getting the right amount of sleep. Yeah. And you guys know you get your best sleep during your last couple hours of your sleep cycle. I'm blowing that away. It's 3:00 in the morning. I'm waking him up Washington time. So when I went in there and I went over to him and I moved him, his body, touched him, and he kind of moved a little bit and moaned a little bit. And that's why I said under my breath, I said, boy, I hate to do this. Well, he yelled, don't do it. That's a direct order from the President of the United States to a Chief Master Sergeant. Yeah. But I know if they're not ready to go when they're ready to go, who they're going to blame. Yeah. That's when I said, sir, it's time to get your ass out of bed and go to work. So I'm the only one that worked for 5 presidents. I'm probably the only one that told the president to get his ass out of bed. And he was okay. He said, "Oh, okay, no problem." He was, he's product of the '60s. His language that he understood. Well, in the meanwhile, Hillary just heard Howie tell her husband, the president, get his ass out of bed. She starts laughing. I looked at Hillary. I said, "Don't you laugh. You're next. Let's go." And while we're talking about that, I can verify that she does carry Tabasco sauce in her purse. It's normal. She does it all the time. She always did. She likes it. So,
how about that?
Right. That's been debunked so many times, and you're like, no, it's true. So many people claim, it's not true. So, but apparently it is. So fantastic. Yeah. Wow. So, boy, we've only touched on a few of them. Yeah. So you talked about why you weren't starstruck when you started getting there. Obviously, growing up around, I almost said to Fig, watch out for falling names. He's dropping them faster than we can catch them. Yeah. But it's true. You've been around all these amazing people, world figures, so much of your life. What was the thing that gave you the most awe I would say either when you first got to the job or any point during that job? When did you realize, man, I'm really seeing history up close and personal? Well,
it reinforced what I wanted to do as a kid, is see the world. And seeing the world. There's very few countries that I haven't been in. And a lot of that is because flying with Henry Kissinger. I love to look at the culture. So when I was with Kissinger into China early on, and something I noticed in China, number one, I know, and this was when they had choo-choo trains and bicycles, okay, compared to nowadays. Right. And I saw the Chinese people, number one, they were workers, hard workers. Yeah. Number two, they're detailed. They don't mind fixing stuff perfectly. If you look at their art, I saw sculptures of elephants' tusks that the inside of the tusk was sculptured and the inside of the inside was sculptured.
Yeah,
they're detailed.
That's detail. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so they're workers and they're detailed, and they like nice stuff. The more gaudy or richer it is, the more they like it. That's the ideal capitalist, actually. So, seeing those people and seeing the world was the thing that I truly enjoyed. And that was not my primary goal. So.
Right. Well, people often say, if I could only been a fly on the wall. And so you were. So I've got a two-part question. One, how long did most of them take to get used to the fact that, we just got to have the meeting and we got to talk openly and frankly and all that, regardless of the fact that the steward is in the room with us, that sort of thing. And what is the most amazing or behind the scenes, like, oh, holy shit, did I just see that you can talk about? Because I'm certain there's things that you saw that you still can't talk about to this day.
Well, I mean, it was a president and what is the head of a Congress, the speaker. Okay. I don't want to mention any name. Okay. And one of the speaker said to the president, I'm in and out of the room. I'm not standing there listening. I'd be playing on. The speaker was drinking a martini that I made for him, and the president was drinking a glass of ice water. And speaker, I overheard him say, sir, we have a lot of differences. And he said, however, and I know at the end of the day, we have to do what's great for the country. Personally, I think that's missing. Yeah. So that to me was extremely inspirational.
Wow. Very cool. And let me ask this. Am I right? Are there things that you saw you went, oh, that could never get out?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. That's why they got us a Yankee White clearance.
Yeah.
I'll give you this. Air Force One, I don't know how it is now, but when I was there during the whole time, it's kind of like being in a MASH outfit or being in a surgery room. Not everything's politically correct because you're on the high wire and you're on the edge all the time. So there's humor going on and things of that nature. One of the most touching moments and scary moments to me, George H. Bush was president. The president knew, and the staff and the whole crew. I was commuting on when I didn't have a mission on a Monday or a Tuesday, and it was Friday coming in. I'm going to Southport, North Carolina, as fast as I could, and everybody knew that. In fact, the navigator, Colonel Jackson, would bring us over Bald Head Island. That's where you go south. That's where most airplanes break ground to go to Florida. And I'd have the president, and myself and the doctor looking out, and I'm pointing down at Oak Island and Bald Head Island and saying, I'm going to be there someday. Someday I'm going to be right there. You see that beach? And they all knew it. So anyway, I don't know if you remember when the statement came out that the President Bush said he didn't like broccoli.
Right.
Yeah, he said, my mother wanted me to eat broccoli, and I'm now president. I'm not eating broccoli, And the lovely thing about it is Barbara said, I love broccoli, and it's great. So they were able to handle that pretty well. Now, with every president comes in, we get the stewards find out, we get if they're allergic to something or they don't like something, we have a list. And I had to answer to the press, and personally, I had to make a written statement. I said, they want to know if the president told me not to serve them broccoli. And I said, I can neither confirm or deny whether the president said that to me, which he didn't. Okay. So anyway, we're coming into Andrews. It's Friday afternoon, and we're about 45 minutes out. And the doctor comes up to me and says, Howie, was there broccoli in that vegetarian lasagna that you served for lunch? I said, well, yes, sir. He said, the president's allergic to broccoli. Well, I'm supposed to know that. And he immediately, he saw my face. He said, no, I know you didn't know. It's not your fault. We know that, but he's not doing very well. Oh, holy shit. So the next thing you know, the pilot, Danny Barr, calls me upstairs and he said, did the doctor talk to you? And I said, yes, sir. He said, Howie, he said, Chief, you're covered. I said, that's not helping me, Eddie.
No.
The president's sick because if he's eating broccoli, and I served it to him. I said, sir, he ate 2 portions of the lasagna.
Right.
So anyway, I go downstairs later on. We're maybe 20 minutes out, and the doctor's getting a shot out to give the president a shot of Demerol or something like that. I'm going, my blood pressure's going off the ceiling,
Yeah.
They knew it. I'm going to go in and see the president. So I walk into his room, and he saw me kind of hang his head down. I said, sir. He said, Howie, it's not your fault. I said, yeah, but sir, he said, I'm not doing very well, but it's not your fault. We know that. I said, oh, shit.
Right.
So anyway, we land. And we're cleaning up the airplane to look up. 2 Secret Service gentlemen are holding the president up as he's walking down the aisle.
Boy.
Huh? So, you know, can you imagine all the things that's going through my mind and my body? We clean the airplane up. I jump in my little Toyota, and I'm getting ready to go to Southport, which everybody knew. And I get through at the golf course at Andrews, and my pager goes off, and my cell phone goes off, and my deputy says the pilot needs to see you in the pilot's office immediately.
Oh, boy.
Right. Thank you. So anyway, I turn around and I go, because I was the chief, I had parking right up next to the pilot's office. If you weren't, you had to park way outside and go through 2 gates and security, and I was able to get right through. I come into the pilot's office. The whole crew, the backup crew and the primary crew, is all in his office. And my blood pressure's maxed out. I mean, I'm tingling. Yeah. And I look over at Colonel Jackson. He was the navigator, and he knew that I was upset, and he gave me the thumbs up. I said, you guys are screwing with me. That's a sign of affection. And the president was in on it.
Oh, my God.
Fantastic.
Can you imagine? But they had me. But they literally got a little upset because are you kidding me? I'm going to get mad because you're screwing with me and he's okay? I love it. Make my day.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, man.
Well, that was well played.
Yeah, that very well done. Oh, man. Well, and it's good to see, again, humor and having fun with each other and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, a MASH or operating room. It's not all politically correct at one time. So
yeah,
it's on the edge stuff. I mean, I'm sure you fighter pilots do that too.
Nope, not at all.
No, never. We're very serious. No smoking and joking. No messing around.
Straight business, Howie. That's how we operate. No,
that's our bullshit story, and we're stuck with it. Oh, man.
I'll give you one with the Carter administration. And it was funny. When I talked to Jeff Morse, he was like an instructor pilot here and things. And he told me that he knew the Carters, and he asked me some things. And I said, one of the things I told him, I said, well, President Carter, he didn't want any alcohol on the airplane, or we had alcohol on the airplane, but he didn't drink and things of that nature in the White House. I had a mission with his mother, Miss Lillian, and she was the head of a delegation going to Golda Meir's funeral in Israel, and she was the head of the delegation. Now, there's a character. You ask anybody in that Carter family, they're going to tell you that lady is a character. Anyway, when she walked on the airplane, her first statement to me is, I'll have a bourbon and branch.
Right on.
Right.
Well, I knew what the bourbon was, but I didn't know what the branch was. Well, it's a Southern term for water, branch water and things of that nature, right? So, and later on, she was playing cards with the senators in the front of the airplane and taking their money and giggling, and then going back with the Secret Service, taking their money and giggling. And she was in the back of the airplane. Somebody wanted a souvenir, and she asked me for a pair of scissors, and she cut her slip on her shoulders and took her slip off and gave it to him as a souvenir.
That's
what
fantastic.
A pistol. Oh, my God. Yeah. That is fantastic.
So at 3 o'clock in the morning, now you guys remember Billy Carter? You heard of that?
Oh,
Billy Beer.
Yeah. Anyway, so at 3 o'clock in the morning, we went into Madrid. We refueled the airplane in Madrid, and we're going across the Mediterranean. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, heading for Israel. And this gracious character of a lady is sitting next to me on the jump seat at the back of the 707. And she's explaining to me how she's still in awe of her son being president. Rightly so. And it was new in the Carter administration. And then she said to me, she said, Howie, because it's kind of funny because when the 2 boys were going to school, Jimmy had to work a lot harder to get the same grades that Billy got.
That's awesome.
I said, oh dear.
Right.
But I have confirmed that with everybody in the Carter, their friends and their relatives, and Rosalind's sister, that Billy was supposed to be more academically inclined than Jimmy. But he liked to tell stories and drink beer and sit in the back of his pickup truck.
Sure. Okay. Well, you got to do what you like to do in life. That's a good thing, but Okay. The other one I had, actually, Jeff Moss sent this question in, is if you could tell us about, I guess Nancy Reagan asked the Secret Service to tell President Reagan that riding horses may not be the best thing for his health.
Yeah, when we were out there in that 2 years after we left office, and I said we saw President Reagan for 45 minutes, and he was sharp as can be. And John Belletta, who just died, and he wrote a book also. And I had shared this story before John had even read the book to Jeff about it. And then he read the book. He said, well, Howie's not bullshitting me. So anyway, John Belletta said, and he told us, and he said, it's getting, this is a couple of months after we had seen him in California. It's getting more unsafe for him riding the horses. Now, this is the passion of this man's life. And, with passion, aviators are passionate about aviation, correct?
Right.
So this guy's passionate about riding horses. He said it was getting unsafe, and he needs to curtail it. And he because he's getting to a point where he doesn't know really what's going on and things of that nature. So John's main mission is to keep the president safe. And he went to Nancy Reagan and he said, Miss Reagan, we have to curtail the horseback riding because, and Mrs. Reagan said to him, John, well, you tell him, which was probably the right thing to do because they had a professional relationship and a personal relationship. And John said that, and it's in his book and it's in my book, they were walking through a park. That's the way I remember it. And he turned to the president and said, you understand about your disease? You understand how it's going to come on? You understand that? And more graciously than I'm saying right now.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
And, there's going to be times where you're not going to realize it, it's going to attack you. And it's a safety issue riding the horses, and we have to curtail the horseback riding. And John told me his first response after telling him, taking away the passion of the man's life.
Yeah.
Reagan's first response was to console John for having to tell him that.
Wow.
I don't care about your politics. That's somebody.
Yeah. What a gentleman. Wow.
That's leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. He knew he understood completely how difficult it was for John to having to tell him that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's true leadership.
Yeah. It's so interesting to see, because we all see these men through the lens of, now it's all cable news, but for the most part, but we all see these men through the lens of what the media decides to put out there.
Yeah.
And
he was a guy.
Yeah.
Okay?
It's nice to see them as the human beings that you saw them as.
Well, one of the stories I usually don't tell, we were going up to Connecticut early in the Reagan administration. They were building nuke subs up there, so Reaganomics was working, see? So, and they had a Congress lady that was with us for her district up there. And when we landed up there, the advance officer came up and said, Chief, we can't fly the helicopters. We were supposed to fly the helicopters, but the fog has set in, so we got to bring up the motorcade. There's going to be a few minutes delay to get the motorcade lined up to come up. And by the way, it's a 45-minute ride. And I said, well, thank you. So I went in and briefed the president those statements. And I said, so there's no rush. And so I come out of the stateroom, and Jimmy Kuhn, who's the appointment secretary for the president, sharp guy. I mean, sharp looking, sharp smiling, on top of everything. And Jimmy Kuhn's standing there, and the Congress lady comes up to depart with the president off the airplane. And I said to the Congress lady, and she was a nice looking lady, no Marilyn Monroe, but nice looking, dressed well and and I explained to her that there's going to be a delay and the motorcade's coming up. And I said, ma'am, by the way, it's a 45-minute ride. You may want to use the restroom before you go. And she goes up to the restroom. And so when she's in the restroom, the president comes down to the stateroom. Jimmy Kuhn now briefs the president what I told the Congress lady. The president turns to the window, and the press is all down the bottom of the stairs. And he says to Jimmy Kuhn, he says, Jimmy, is Sam Donaldson down there? Jimmy looks, he says, yeah, Sam's down there. He says, okay, send Howie out, let him yell down. There'll be a few minutes delay. And when I come out with this good-looking Congress lady, I'll be pulling my zipper up. Okay? Now, when he talks, you believe him.
Right. Wait, who?
Jimmy Kuhn's having a heart attack. He's pressing on the president's shoulder. Sir, you can't do that. And the president's winking at me, So what I'm saying, he's a guy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What? Hold on. We're talking about President Reagan, right?
Reagan, right?
Oh my gosh. That is. Well, he had an amazing sense of humor, right? I mean that just perfectly shows. Well,
And he'd always
how
want to tell you a story. I said President Bush went and met with him while we were out in California. I said, did he tell you a story? He said, oh yeah, he's going to tell you a story. He loved telling you a story. When President Bush was inaugurated and Reagan was no longer president, 7000, we're now flying him to California. And we were about 30 minutes out of LA, maybe a little more. And I went into the stateroom and I said, sir, would you like to make the last landing with us? And he said, sure, that'd be fine. So we walked out of the stateroom, and again, the side pouches and the windows are there, and we're flying over the Los Angeles area, flying over, I think it was Orange County. And he said, Howie, you want to see where all the Republicans live? I said, yes, sir. He looks out, he said, you see all those swimming pools down there?
Okay.
So anyway, we escort him up to the cockpit, and the pilot's seat, the co-pilot, flight engineers to the right, and navigators to the left with his head to the bulkhead. And there's right behind the pilot seat, there's an observer seat.
Right.
And we set the president in the observer seat. And I can see LAX way out in front of us. The gear's not down yet, but I can see LAX in the ocean because it's a clear day. And it's a little quiet. Actually, Reagan starts telling us a story, the whole crew. He said, you know, guys, a friend of mine my age, which was close to 80, I think, he said, convinced his wife and his doctor he wanted to donate to a sperm bank. Now, when I'm telling you this, if you can imagine Ronald Reagan telling a story, not me.
Yeah, right. Yes.
Right? So I'm saying, where the hell's this going to go? You know?
Right.
So he said he convinced the doctor and he went to the sperm bank with his wife. And he said the nurse there was a little concerned because of his age. You know, he's my age, my good friend. He said, and they gave him a jar and a magazine, and they took him to this room. Imagine Reagan telling the story. Okay?
Right.
And he said he was in there for 15 minutes, and the nurse is really nervous because of his age. He's in there 15 minutes. All of a sudden, it's 20 minutes, and she's getting even more nervous. Finally, 40 minutes goes by. Reagan says, and he comes out of the room and walks up to the nurse. He said, you know, ma'am, I did everything I could. He said, I hid it on the side of the sinks. I ran hot water over it, but I just can't get the lid off this jar.
I did not see that coming, Hal.
No, we didn't either, you know.
I bet.
Did everything I could. I ran hot water over it. I hit it on the sink.
I hope you get what I'm trying to get a point across. All of these gentlemen are just as real as you and I.
Sure. You bet.
Believe me, very much. They hurt, they bleed, they cry, they feel.
Yeah.
Well, I do know the one Reagan story was, he says, I hope you're all Republicans when he was about to go under surgery, you know. Yeah.
Well, one time we were going to Texas, and he was running a little late. And he came up to me real close, and he said, Howie, they're sending me to Texas. I said, yes, sir. He said, yeah, but they send me to a turkey shoot. I said, well, yes, sir. He said, I don't know why they send me to Texas. I got enough turkeys in Washington. If we were going to California, if we were going to Ohio, he'd say, we're going in the right direction, but we're not going far enough. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
So one time we're going to California, and he says, he was in the conference room, and the staff was on one end of the conference room doing work, and they finished their work, so they start making small talk. The president's by himself on the other end of the conference room, maybe 6 feet away, and he's writing notes and doing things and doing whatever. Nobody thinks he's paying attention to the discussion that's going on, and they decided they were talking about Hollywood at the time was considering making a life story movie of Mickey Rooney. And at the time, Mickey Rooney was alive, okay? And so then the discussion goes on about, and finally it comes out to wonder who they're going to get to play Mickey Rooney. And they mentioned a couple of names. And then somebody in the group said, why don't they get Mickey Rooney to play Mickey Rooney? And the president turned to the group and said, he's too short.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, funny.
Fantastic. Gosh, this is amazing, Howie. Just truly amazing. It's like listening to, well, it's like it is history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A witness to history.
What I always try to say, they were all real people, I mean, they very much so.
So you've got a website, howiefranklin.com. And how many books do you have? Are you one or two?
I got one out, and it's howiefranklin.com. Yes, sir, Mr. President.
That's it.
I was on when Candace Brown talked to me on 27000 taking it to California. My wife and myself was in their Rolodex. So during the Bush administration, his second administration, they had a big thing on presidential and elections, and they had a mock-up of Air Force One on the Today Show, and they invited my wife and I to do an interview. And remember, it's show business like you guys are in. So they asked me to write down 5 questions they'd like me to ask them, like them to ask me, and the answers, in which I did, and my wife did also. And we did a nice interview with Al Roker. At the end of his interview, he said, Howie, I'd love to hear the rest of your stories. So I got picked up by APB Speakers Bureau. And we're talking about Tom Brokaw and Gorbachev and Howie Franklin. Are you kidding me? And they said I was the cheapest, best speaker they had. So I spoke around the country, and my wife was there at some of my speeches, and people would come up and say, you need to write a book. And I thought they'd just being nice. And no, my wife said, no, you got to write a book. So we wrote a book, and it'll make you laugh. One of the stories in there, gentlemen, you were in the Marine Corps. When I was 20 and I got drafted, and I'm in basic training, and we're in Texas. And my TI, all due respect, was kind of an alcoholic, and my group stayed by themselves most of the time. He wasn't in the barracks. And, you're not supposed to do anything they don't let you do, especially go to the patio and have a Coca-Cola. Sure. And so my buddy, everybody else was probably a little younger than us, and my buddy says to me, you got balls? He said, why don't you go over to the patio area and get us 2 Cokes? I said, sure, I can do that. So I walk over. I'm in fatigues, not supposed to have anything in your pockets or anything like that. I walk over to the patio area. I've been there about 2 weeks. So, having a Coke was nothing, but now it's really special, right?
Yeah. And
it was the 8-ounce bottles. And I bought a Coke for me, and I drank it immediately, and it was luxurious. Okay. And Texas was San Antonio in August and September. It's 110 degrees.
Yeah, but at least it's humid.
Yeah. And the ground's cracking. I'd never seen the ground crack. Anyway, so now I put 2 more Cokes, and how am I going to get them back to the barracks across this area? So I stuck them in my pockets, sticking out my pants pockets. And I'm walking across the area, and this TI from another group, not mine, saw me, and this guy starts salivating. He's excited.
You bet. Oh, boy.
Yeah, he comes over to me and jumps, Airman, a report. And I jump to attention and salute, and he returned the salute, and I returned my salute. And he said, what is the outrageous? Well, you know better. You're not supposed to be carrying anything in your pockets. And he went on, and I said, sir, I am a dipshit. I don't know how to drink soda properly. Until I learn how to drink soda properly, I have to carry these soda bottles around and tell everybody I'm a dipshit.
You clever son of a bitch. That's awesome.
Did he buy that? Did he buy that?
He loved it.
Oh,
Are you kidding me? The guy, he salivated. Anytime you were belittling yourself, and it was true, he believed it. So we and Jack went back to the barracks, and we put our feet up. We're drinking this Coke, and I said, that guy's going to tell his friends tonight. You should have seen the asshole I saw today. This dipshit with the 2 bottles of soda. And I said, we toasted to each other with the soda. So do we give a shit if he thinks we're a dipshit or not?
That's great.
So stories like that and all kinds of stuff with Secretary of State, Secretary of Defenses, and things like that are in the book.
Howie, how many hours of flying did you log?
I don't know. I need to do that. It's thousands, more than most people.
I would probably be not surprised that you have an airline pilot kind of log
25, 30,000 hours.
Yeah, I think it's more than that, actually. Wow. I need to go check that out. But
how many active duty years did you have?
29.
Holy shit. Okay.
And he only had to extend 25 years after his initial commitment.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, I wanted out. I was a chief in the Air Force. I was not very military. I mean, I like what I did, and I like taking care of people. In 1965, when I got drafted, I was a surfer on Fire Island, and we were kind of environmentalists where we didn't like people throwing trash on the ground or anything like that. And the only guys had long hair was me and my buddies and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. So I went in the Air Force, and my uncle cut my friend's hair and my hair, and he had a bucket full of hair. But I mean, I wasn't long down to my shoulders. I looked maybe like Elvis Presley's length of his hair when he had long hair.
Sure.
And they cut my hair, and I got pissed from that day forward. So we'd be in the barbershop at Andrews, and I'm the chief, and the young sergeants are sitting there next to me, and they'd hear me tell the barber, I need a haircut, but I don't want to look like I got a haircut.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was not, I liked my job. I liked what I did. I liked the area. I liked my bosses. I mean, we had, like I said, my pilots had balls so big, it was incredible.
Can you be a little more specific about that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Colonel McClellan, who became when he retired as a chief pilot, he was the president of Challenger up in Connecticut, up in Canada, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he was a great pilot. He wore an airplane like a leather glove and could land like a leather glove. I mean, he's beautiful. He wasn't very military either. He was a farmer. If you wanted to talk to Colonel McClellan, tell him how's he doing rebuilding his John Deere tractor, he'd talk to you. But talking military stuff, he wasn't big on it. So my first trip with Jerry Ford, and we were going to SAC headquarters and in Omaha, Nebraska. And it was my first time that I'm asking for a show and tell. Okay, bring some friends of mine on the airplane to see the airplane. And he said, and I was a little reticent to do that. I'm brand new on the crew. And he said, sure. He said, he gave me the advance officer's name and number. And I called him. He said, he'll tell him that I said to get your show and tell for your friends. So anyway, he did. And it was a master sergeant, his wife and 2 kids. And he was the chief of maintenance in Omaha. So we land there in Omaha, and, we got a block time. Air Force One is known. Whatever we publish, we're going to make that block time on the numbers. Okay?
And I'm guessing people don't tell you no very often.
No.
Just a guess.
So anyway, there's 22 generals on the ramp in Omaha that's based there at SAC headquarters. Okay? So anyway, the president left and the motorcades left, and I walk up front, and Colonel Mack's coming from up. He was down there talking to this general. He walks back up the stairs, and he said, he said to Chief Lopez, he said, the only guy authorized to show and tell is Franklin, and I'm out of here. Okay? And Joe said, why is that? He said, you know what that general said to me? And he said, what? He said, taxiing kind of fast, weren't you, Colonel?
No shit.
And the colonel said, I don't want to use the F word.
That's okay. You can do
okay.
that.
We're explicit. Here it comes.
Okay. The colonel says to the general, he said he didn't. He said, I smiled and walked back upstairs. He said, I should have told him this wasn't one of his fucking SAC bombers.
Right?
Right? Yeah. We don't belong to you, right?
Yeah. But thanks for the advice. Oh, man.
So
Fantastic.
there's 22 generals sitting there, the big guys.
Yeah.
In Strategic Air Command, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So they escort this master sergeant, his wife, and 2 kids out to the airplane. They go up on the airplane. I give them a show and tell. They walk off with a paper bag with some souvenirs from the airplane. And some young captain runs up to Frank and said, sir. He said, what? He said, do you need transportation anywhere? He said, no. He said, why? He said, because you got to know somebody, he said.
All right.
None of the generals got on the airplane.
That's fantastic.
Too funny.
So
Go ahead, Fig.
Well, I was just going to say, for our listeners that aren't aware of this, when Air Force One is moving, everything stops. So they clear airspace, they stop things on the ground. So, yeah, you're going to make your block time because everything's out of your way, right?
Yeah, well, the one thing that all presidents miss when they leave is Air Force One.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
And for many reasons, the primary reason is they're number one for takeoff.
Always.
Yeah.
You're never waiting for a takeoff slot. You're never waiting for a landing slot.
What are you doing in LaGuardia and you're not, you're just an ex-president?
They don't sit in traffic jams. They don't,
Nope.
and they don't hold on the in the hold short. But holy smokes!
Yeah, I can unfortunately say I've been on the other end. I've been on the receiving end of that multiple times, and it's not pleasant. But hey, that's the cost of doing business sometimes.
We had Bacchus on the show at one point. He was an air traffic controller, retired Boston Center supervisor, and one of the jokes they played on one of his supervisors once is he leaned over and said, pretended to key the mic. Air Force One was coming into Boston. He pretended to key the mic, and he saw his supervisor standing behind him, and his supervisor didn't know it. He goes, Air Force One, need you to tighten up your turn there. The supervisor's like, no, you can't do that. He goes, gotcha. So, but yeah, because it's, in fact, we had Shyster on. He talked about, he did the logistics department, Bob Darling, and Bob, I guess. And he said, we just didn't get told no when we wanted something. So I can imagine that even though planning was difficult and tedious, that people jumped through hoops to make it happen for you.
Yeah.
So,
well, we always were appreciative, as far as I know.
Yeah.
That was the mission,
Sure. What was it harder overseas? How did you do that overseas when you needed food? You're in Cairo or you're in Moscow or whatever. Obviously, the State Departments work together and that sort of thing. But
yeah, well, usually you go to the American embassy. The embassy in Moscow, when we walk in, they'd scream. So, because they know we're going to clean them out. They knew us. The 707 was very difficult because we didn't have the refrigeration set up. Now, when we built the 747, Chief Haig was the chief. I was his deputy. Timmy was my deputy. The 747, we were able to convince the Boeing to let the people who worked in their crew position get involved in the design of the layout of the airplane.
brilliant.
That's smart.
Yeah. And Mrs. Reagan is the one that picked out the decor of the airplane. I ran into a colonel that was in the Pentagon he said he got all the colors together on the new Air Force 747 and Air Force colors. They're blues and grays and light blues and stuff like that, and the materials, and brought it to Nancy Reagan in the White House. And she looked at it and she said, "Oh, that's very nice, but don't you think it ought to be a desert motif?" Yeah. Guess what? It was a desert motif.
Yeah, funny how that works, huh?
Yeah. What are the odds? Beautiful.
But yeah, it's the airplane is just, we were able to, the galleys, I think, on Air Force One are probably the best galleys in the whole world. Timmy did an incredible job on them. We looked at, I said, you got to think about how the meal's getting prepared and going out and how the meal's coming back. And flow process charts and things of this nature. And our motivation was on 27000 or 26000, if you ever get a chance to see the airplane, go look at the front galley. Some engineer designed it that never cooked a meal. It looked nice. It looked nice, but it was a piece of crap. So that's why we were highly motivated to get involved in the galleys. The other thing was, we had good refrigeration and freezers in the galleys in the front and the back of the airplane. But in the front of the airplane, we can go downstairs to the belly, and we had two huge refrigerators and two huge freezers. I mean, they were like 6 foot deep with shelves that can pull out. And in the back of the airplane for the back galley, two big refrigerators and freezers. And guess what? We got a separate APU sitting on the airplane, keeping the refrigeration going all the time.
Yep.
Because remember, our job is to not have anything that's been consumed on the airplane been tampered with. Now, sure. I used to tell the State Department, and they got a little tight. There was a lady named Jeannie Bull, and she was the one that we paid to do the trip. And we were going somewhere, and I said, "Jeannie, we got to have a second meal on the airplane. We always do in case we got a side trip, So she said, "No, we can't afford that." So anyway, we're on the trip, and we're in Paris. And she calls me at 10 o'clock at night, and she says, "Howie, we got a side trip. We're going to Saudi." I said, I said, "I'm not the type of guy to tell you I told you so." So you don't have to worry about that. However, I got to buy a meal in Saudi Arabia. And a friend of mine that used to be in our outfit worked for the Prince of Saudi Arabia, Prince Bandar, and he was in and out of there. So he was in Washington. From Paris, I called him. I said, "You got to put me in touch with the King's caterer."
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So anyway, we got into Saudi Arabia. In other words, I needed a meal coming out of Saudi Arabia. And I really didn't like that idea. And so anyway, but we got with the kings, and I had to go through 4 different stages of people and have tea before I got to the head guy.
Oh my
Right.
gosh.
Very social.
And
Oh my God.
they were, they all, every step the people dressed nicer. So,
Yeah.
and then Jeannie Bull says to me from the State Department, he says, they're going to offer to pay for this. Okay. They're going to offer to pay for this. And what am I going to do? She said, you got to say no 5 times. I said, okay. I know they're going to offer to pay for it. I mean, that's guaranteed. Sure. So anyway, we get in there, and Timmy's with me, my deputy, and we're ordering some stuff. And I said in front of the head guy of this catering outfit was treating his people like they were dogs. I mean, it was just obvious. Just, my God. The way difference between we treated our people and the way he was treating his people. Mm-hmm. So as we were going through there, and I mentioned, well, we got to be careful about the price. And he said, no, we're paying for it. I said, okay. Remember, I was supposed to say 5 times. And then my deputy goes, yeah, we'll have a case of this and 2 cases of that.
Fantastic.
The other one was we were in Moscow, and Jeannie calls me up. This is another trip. And we're in Moscow on another trip, and she calls me up and said, we got a side trip to Zagreb, and we need a lunch on the airplane. Now, this was after the communists supposed to have left. The communist wall fell, but it didn't get rid of all the communists. You know that, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
And all over the world. Anyway, so she calls me and we need a lunch meal. So we're staying in a hotel that was owned by Canada, and the head guy of the hotel went to CIA, which we did. And he had a Russian roommate, so he learned Russian, and he got the job over running this first-class hotel in Moscow. And I ended up bringing the Navy cooks in to observe whatever was being prepared and done for the president and the crew and the staff. So I'm talking to the manager of this big hotel, and I said, what kind of management problems do you have? He said, number one, I have nuclear physicists out here mopping the floor for me. And he said, number 2, he said, they're all jealous of anything that anybody has. And this was early on. They still didn't have much. I mean, I remember growing up, guys, I'm older than you, that Russia was this big threat.
Right.
Well, the first time I got in there in 1970, I realized it was a third world country.
Right. Yeah.
And so anyway, he said, first of all, they're all jealous of everything that they have. They steal everything. I have to lock up the cocktail napkins. He said, and the other one is they're all alcoholics, and they're all sleeping with each other's wives. What kind of man? I said, it sounds like my old outfit back in the 70s. So, anyway.
Wow. I totally understand that, having touched small areas around that.
Well, the Russian said to me in 1970 when I got in there, this was under the communists, and I like to talk to the people. The most interesting thing I ever saw in Moscow was the Moscow War Museum. Their position on how they perceived their World War II.
Yes.
And then in the museum, they had the missile that shot down Powers.
Right.
And underneath the missile, they had his flight jacket and his gun and something else.
Sure.
On display there.
Whoa.
Sure.
What do we do?
I'm back. Yeah, my camera was off briefly.
Are you
Hey,
still
Mike.
there? Uh-oh. Howie, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm lost. Hold on a second.
Okay. Well, we'll take this opportunity to thank Robbie here. So there I was, staring at my retirement account, thinking, man, I should have talked to Robbie Walling at HSI Wealth Strategies about 20 years ago.
Oh,
I had a budget, a spreadsheet, a dream, but in reality, that's not enough, Fig.
Repeat. I've known Robbie for over a decade, and let me tell you, the guy's as solid as they come. In addition to HSI Will Strategies, he's an Air National Guard pilot. He's an aircraft commander in a C-130. He's sharp as a tack, and he gets us. Military and airline pilots aren't your average 9-to-5 crowd, and HSI isn't your average financial group.
Well, exactly. We're smart folks. Just ask us, right? I mean, we know how to plan a flight down to the minute. But planning a 30-year retirement, well, that's a whole different airspace there, man. And HSI knows how to navigate that.
On average, their clients end up with, get this, $1.5 million more than folks going it alone. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because HSI knows strategies that most of us were never taught. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. How many times have we heard that over our career, right?
And yeah, we insist on not doing it so much to ourselves, right? But here's the kicker. Look, right? It's not what you save. It's what you keep. Okay? Right? I mean, think about it. Between taxes and timing and the unexpected, because that never happens, you can lose altitude fast without the right plan. I wish I'd known that when I started out. But
right.
This is your chance to avoid the common pitfalls that you just don't think about without a solid financial planning background.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't fly a long-haul flight without a fuel plan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should know that. So why approach retirement that way? Because we're basically talking about kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy, he's one of my peers, who has put money in all the right places, but had no idea that he was setting himself up for like a tax meltdown down the road. Smart guy. He just didn't have the right map.
Yeah, right. I mean, Uncle Sam has long fingers that reach way down into your pockets when you least expect it. Right?
Right.
So let the professionals at HSI do what they do best so you can keep flying safely into retirement.
Yeah. Don't be a moron. Call Robbie at 214-538-7030. That's 214-JET-7030.
Or email him, robbie.walling@nm.com. That's robbie.walling, WALLING @NM, that's November Mike.com. Look, don't wait until your final approach to start thinking about retirement. Do it now. Your future self will thank you.
Trust us. Don't be that guy.
Don't do it. Call Robbie. Before we went to thank Robbie, you were talking about being in Moscow and the museum and all that. What are some of the best downtime you got? Because I imagine that you weren't attached to the airplane 24/7 when you were overseas.
Well, remember I said Reagan was the most organized?
Sure.
He was also of the age group that you work from 9 to 5. Now, he's willing to work more than that if it's needed. But if it's not needed, you don't do stuff like that.
Okay.
So in 8 years, we never took off any earlier than 9:30.
Well, that's nice.
And we landed somewhere around 5:30 for cocktails.
That's gentlemanly schedule right there.
Yeah.
Right?
And yeah, he was very good and good to the crew. Have you ever been to Bali?
I have not.
Nope.
Been to the Hawaiian Islands and Wake. Been to Wake.
I've been awake also. But yeah, Bali's beautiful. Barbados was beautiful. And, if we went to Moscow or wherever we went, the president goes to work and we're off duty.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And
your job is getting there.
yeah. And they would, we went, when we go to Moscow, they were very good in their protocol. We would go to the ballet, and then we go to the circus, and we go all this stuff, and they all treat us very nice. Now, back in the 70s, my favorite thing to do when the Russian airplane crew came in, I'd take them to the local supermarket.
Yeah,
I saw a pilot cry.
Yeah, because of because they didn't have that kind of variety, right?
No, I remember in the square there. They had, this is during the communists, there was a line that was probably 8 to 9 people wide, and it was a quarter of a mile long, and they were getting their distribution of meat.
Wow.
Okay. And then you didn't ask for a cut.
No.
The guy'd hack you off a piece of meat, and it was probably close to being rotten because they had no refrigeration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's.
I remember telling the press when we're going flying into Moscow, count your refrigeration vehicles. Well, the thing is, and I remember going to Moscow for the first time. I went into a men's store. It looked like the worst thrift store you ever went into in your life. And the men's pants had buttons. That's because if you invented a zipper, you didn't make any more money.
Okay.
And the Russians people used to say, the government pretends to pay us, so we pretend to work.
Tend to work.
That's education that I have traveling around the world, and it was beyond valuable.
But what you didn't talk about, you talked about where everybody else was on the airplane, but on the long hauls especially, you guys had to take breaks and that sort of thing. What were the crew quarters like on Air Force One?
Well, in the back of the airplane, on one side is in the stern of the airplane. One side is the press area. The other side is a crew area, and every seat is a first class seat that reclines very reasonable. And if they got a chance to sleep, they do that. Up in the 747, when you walk first upstairs, there's several radio operators. I think there's 4 radio operators now. It's probably more than that. It used to be we could make 85 telephone calls at one time off the airplane, and we also had secure voice. And from the radio operator area, walk into the crew area, which is a table with a TV and 4 first-class chairs, and then there's 4 bunks across the way. Now, if I was the chief running the airplane and I'm responsible for everything goes on, go take a nap. I don't think so. When I could sleep on an airplane, it was a long day and I was tired.
Right. Okay. How long were you the HMFIC on Air Force One?
During the half of the Bush administration and half of the Clinton administration.
Okay.
So I worked for Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton. He's guilty, but he's a nice guy.
Which one? All of them. Okay.
Well, one of the jokes I had with him after he left office, he has contacted me several times, and the golf story about playing it down in Durrell. One of his stewards after I left, Steve Lomanak, lives here also on the golf course. So Timmy was flying NetJet, and he ran into him, and Timmy called me and said, "Hey, the president asked about you." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Is Howie still in North Carolina?" And Timmy said, "Not only is Howie in North Carolina, but Steve's in North Carolina. They both live on a golf course. Steve works on the golf course, so they're both playing free golf." President said, "Who didn't know that shit?" So 3 months later, a gentleman, one of my customers from upstate New York, Hillary was being placed in some special organization, and the president was there, and the gentleman had donated the place for the event, and the president was coming to his house for a meet and greet, and I had given him an Air Force One golf ball, so he sent me a picture and told him what to say. So 3 months later, after Timmy had talked to the president, he walks into this house in Seneca Falls, and he said, "Timmy and Howie say hello from North Carolina. They both live on a golf course. Steve works on a golf course, so they're both playing free golf." And the president said, "I've been hearing that shit all over the world."
Oh, fantastic. Wow.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I had a good time in my military career.
Howie, you have had an amazing career in the military.
Right.
Just truly amazing and
I'm jealous.
Unique. It's like one of a kind. It really is.
Absolutely. And remember, I was going to get in and get out. I mean, I lived in Bayport, Long Island, New York. Roosevelt, I played in his house when I was a kid. I had made more money when I was 20 years old, half a year in the Air Force and half a year as a civilian in 1965, and then a 20-year staff sergeant in the Air Force made.
How about that?
So, yeah, it was. I couldn't wait to get out. I couldn't wait to go home. Now, if I lived in a little place in some place in the woods where I didn't like, it'd be a different story.
Right.
It was. I wanted to get home as fast as I could.
Sure.
And get back at it.
I mean, when I got drafted, I was clearing $110 a week after taxes. I had driving a 1960 Chevrolet Impala convertible in 1965. I had a gorgeous girlfriend who was giving me all the affection I wanted, and life was great. And I got drafted.
Yeah, and everything kind of went to shit all of a
The
sudden.
hell, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. You wanted to get back. You wanted to get back and get at it.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
it looks like it all worked out pretty damn spectacular, just the way it was supposed to.
Well, the airport here, the Cape Fear Jetport, it was Brunswick County Airport. Now, what we have here, and several of us that live here are a little frustrated because everybody's moving here. According to Virginia Tech, we get the best weather on the coast from Maine to Key West. We have 60 miles of beach, 39 golf courses, and they're all coming in. The other day I had 4 Gulfstream 650s sitting on the ramp, and they weren't chartered. They all owned them. One from San Francisco, one from Dallas, one from Teterboro, one from Connecticut. Now, they're all billionaires. They're coming here. That means everybody else that's already here are geniuses because they're not stupid people that's coming in here.
Right.
Where, as far as operations and landings and takeoff, we're number 4 in the state of North Carolina, according to FAA. Charlotte's number 1, Raleigh's number 2, Greensboro's number 3, and Cape Fear Jetport's number 4. Our economic impact when I got here was $40,000 a year. It's now $557 million a year economic impact, and $38 million goes to the county. So we're having fun, and all my guys that's refueling, they get 8 cents a gallon for every gallon of gas they sell. So they have ownership.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and our reviews for customer service are off the wall because my guys, they have ownership, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So their joke is they're kissing ass and selling gas.
Right.
And we take great care of the Marines. They come through here all the time.
Oh, the Harriers here, yeah. The last VMA 223 is our old squadron. It's the last Harrier squadron. I know they're in there a lot because Badass, our photographer, takes a lot of pictures of them down there.
Yeah, well, and something that I don't want the locals to know. If they come in, Marines come in, we want to know how many crew they all get pizzas and Coca-Cola. My chairman of my board is 82nd Airborne, full colonel, Purple Heart reciprocate, and people complain about the noise. His statement is it's the sound of freedom.
Right on.
And we take care of the troops. So
fantastic. Love it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're doing great. We're enjoying ourselves. But I mean, my guys have bought into. We're in the customer service business. The fact that we move airplanes, refuel airplanes, put them in and out of hangars, those are tasks that we do safely. But basically, we're in the customer service business.
So, hey, Howie, how long is this? Are you running it? Do you own it?
No, I run it it's an independent municipality. We're like any other town. We're not a county airport. So I'm here 32 years. Wow. And I've loved every minute of it. Well, and you're winning, this friend, one time, Henry Kister, they were talking about, we were doing that shuttle diplomacy between Damascus and we fly from Tel Aviv to Damascus, and we sit on the ground and we got to be ready to go hour by hour. It's none of this. You're going to be sitting here for 5 hours or whatever it is, hour by hour. Sometimes it would be 18 hours.
Yeah, and you're basically on call, ready to go.
Ready to go. Yeah. Okay. So, and everybody was sick. The staff was sick. A couple of my navigator was sick. The press was sick. And they asked Henry, they said, how do you do it? He's got all this energy. He said, when you're on the high wire and you're winning, you got more energy. And you ever play Monopoly late at night where you're more happy and wide awake when you're winning other than the guy that's losing?
Right.
Sure.
So it reinforces itself.
Right. Oh, fantastic.
Well, Howie, listen, I can't put into words how awesome it's been listening to your stories.
Right.
We've been going almost 2.5 hours, and I'm so grateful and humbled that you are sharing this with us.
Well, Jeff Moss is a good friend and a good partner of mine, so I'm glad he was able to get you that. Hey, looking for guys, that pilot I was talking about, the Air Force pilot that punched out here.
Yes.
I'm on the Speakers Bureau, Aviation Speakers Bureau, and
Yes.
he's in there. If you look up Aviation Speakers Bureau, you'll see him, and he would be somebody to. I mean, you're talking about everything that he went through, and then he's healed and stuff like that. Can you imagine punching out straight down and you're going full speed?
Nope.
No, you don't want to do that. That's you're glad to have that handle if you need it, but you don't want to use
it. You better tuck yourself. You know that.
Yeah.
So
fantastic,
guys. It's been fantastic. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
it's been amazing.
It has been. So we're going to take a minute here to land this airplane, say a couple thank yous, and then we're going to go to our Patreon extra story for everybody who has lost control of their mental faculties and give us money. So first of all, thank you for your service to our country, to the presidents, to make it easier for them to do a difficult job under the best of circumstances. We're grateful that you decided to extend beyond your initial 4 years by a couple of decades and a half.
So did I.
Yeah. Thank you to Dave Hamilton over at Backbeat Media online. Backbeatmedia.com handles our advertising. We're appreciative of what they do for us. Oh, and while I'm saying our thank yous, I forgot to say thank you to all veterans and active duty for their service, and of course their families who make it possible. Any other? Oh, and I didn't say thank you to Dave and Sadie at Backbeat Media Online. They helped make this happen. So, any other thank yous there, Fig?
Well, he lives in the backyard of our friend Howie now.
Yeah,
Brad Silcott, BDS Aviation, a.k.a. Badass. Thank you for providing all the photos that you do for us.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much. Hey, we would appreciate if you would go to sotheriwas.us/giveaway. One of the things you can do over there is give us a 5-star rating, and the April giveaway is up. Win a So There I Was show banner beach towel. And a 5-foot beach towel done for you. Those things are gorgeous. I happen to have one. I love mine. And one of the things you can do, give us a 5-star rating. It's not that hard. Doesn't cost you anything, and you get a chance now to win a little bit of show merch.
Yeah, if you can't give us 5 stars, tell us why, because we're trainable.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you want to buy some merch, if you don't happen to win sotheriwas.us/giveaway, you can get your own show merch. Shot glasses, beer glasses, koozies, a clock, a beach towel. I don't know. Anything else there, Fig, you think that...
Well, it's approaching bikini season. And we have a So There I Was bikini.
We do indeed.
It's pretty nice.
With a QR code right on the front of the bottom, because you want people pointing cameras at that one.
Yes.
So, I don't know. There's no ejection seat handle, no collective, none of that crazy stuff. But I think, until... Oh, we got one more. Thank you.
Well, that's the two, that's the two F-16 pilots that make the Air Force sound good. That's the Dos Gringos. Thank you to the Dos Gringos for letting us use your music.
Right. It's fantastic music. 4 albums, not a bad one in the bunch. Amazon Music, Spotify, it's all there. But anyway, everybody, until next week, stay safe and check 6.
See ya!
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Hold on. What'd he say, Fig?
He said it's over.
If I knew I was going to meet the president, I would have worn a tie. I mean, look at me.